Hey folks, welcome back to Dub Africa. This is Chris again. And breaking news out of South Africa at this hour. Chris Hani's killer is once again denied parole by South Africa's justice system. Well, Chris Hani's murderer, Janusz Walus, has once again lost his bid for parole. He failed to convince the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria that he should be released. Now, this convicted murderer is currently serving a life sentence for shooting Chris Hani outside his Dawn Park home back in 1993 in the chaos that was taking place in the build-up to the all-race elections in 1994. The ruling upholds a refusal by Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola, the Minister of Injustice, to grant Wallace parole. Now, Lamola said that the reason he denied parole was that the crime was intended and had the potential to bring about civil war within the republic at the time. Well, that's interesting, since that's a country that doesn't exist anymore. And since people went before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and their crimes were forgiven, they're politically motivated crimes, which is no doubt what was going on here with Janusz Walus. This was a politically motivated crime. Other criminals have had their sentences suspended and been forgiven for their crimes as a consequence of appearing before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. An option that was denied to Janusz Walus. He was not permitted to appear before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Why? Why? The murderers who drug American grad student Amy Biehl from her car and beat her to death with stones in the build-up to the 1994 elections, Amy Biehl was murdered by a gang of thugs. They were granted an appearance before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for their politically motivated crime of murdering her for the crime of being white and blonde. The American grad student, Amy Biehl. Roughly 5 years after their imprisonment for this horrific crime in which they beat her to death and laughed at her as she moaned in agony, they were given parole. The violent offenders who butchered and murdered young Amy Biehl because she was white have been out of prison for 20 years now, ladies and gentlemen. While Tito Mboweni makes race mercantilist comments in his tweets about claiming that the majority of white South Africans are not committed to non-racialism, with no evidence whatsoever to support his outlandish claim, if in fact any white South Africans are not committed to non-racial society, is it any wonder? Is it any wonder, while the brutal rapes, disfigurements, dismemberments, torture and murder of people on farms in South Africa is ignored by its criminal justice system and its police service as just another crime? Their lives matter less than someone else's? While the economic freedom fighters stoke racial hatred with false claims about things like cliques, inciting domestic terrorism against 44 cliques locations with no consequences whatsoever for Julius Malema and his merry band of thugs. While the EFF violates court orders in which a court judge foolishly gave them permission to show up at a high school and protest fraudulent claims of racism in that school with 100 demonstrators. And they show up between 3,000 to 5,000 armed, menacing members of the economic freedom fighters carrying clubs, golf clubs, pangas, and knob carries. While this racial hatred goes on, while in Senegal on the 16th of October, a court case in which Julius Malema has no interest whatsoever. He's not a person affected by the crime. He's not the accused. He's not the defense. He's not a community member. He's just an interloper who shows up with a 26 police car escort, leading a merry band of 6,000 to 8,000 of his supporters who are not from the Free State, trucked in from Gauteng to Toy, breaking apart rubbish bins, concrete rubbish bins, destroying street signs and leaving trash all over in their wake. But before they left, they sang songs about killing the Boer and then burning the Boer down. Within 48 hours, EFF-inspired arsonists torched 92,000 hectares in the Free State Northern Cape. Is it any wonder that some white South Africans might indeed not be in favor of non-racialism when clearly they're a target of racial hatred by the ruling party and one of the opposition parties, the Economic Freedom Fighters? There is no equal justice in South Africa. We hear the EFF whine constantly about how there are different rules for whites and blacks. There are. But it's not white and black. It's different rules for elites. It's different rules for cadres. Tony Yangeni is a convicted felon, yet he's treated and feted like a hero in South Africa. Winnie Mandela was convicted of horrific crimes under apartheid, in which she was responsible for the kidnapping that led to the death of Stumpy, a 14-year-old boy who was fraudulently claimed to be a collaborator with the apartheid state. And for that, he was murdered by her soccer club. She was convicted of kidnapping. Under the African National Congress majority-led government, she was convicted of corruption by stealing from Parliament. Yet on her passing, she's venerated as a hero. And people don't understand. Now, this is not a video calling for empathy or sympathy for Waluś, Janusz Walus. He committed a murder, whether it was politically motivated or it was a crime of passion or an attempted robbery. Doesn't matter. There's no difference. Chris Hani is still dead and has been dead since 1993. And Janusz Walus is where he belongs, behind bars. But the young black men who tortured, murdered, and stoned to death an innocent young American girl who had nothing to do with their nonsense were granted an appearance before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, yet Walus wasn't. They were granted their freedom after just over 5 years in prison for murder and have walked free on the soil of South Africa for 20 years. That's not an equal system of justice. That's not equality. That is not fair. Now, that's just one anecdotal example from two cases we're talking about. But if Tito Mboweni wonders why, in his mind, not in reality, there may be some South Africans, although he claims virtually all white South Africans, who don't believe in a non-racial society. Can you blame them when they're the target of rape, murder, arson, homicide, exclusion? Gee, I wonder why people might be upset. And the only answer we have from people like Tito Mboweni is, well, there was apartheid. That doesn't explain the fact that over half the population of South Africa today was born after the end of apartheid under the regime of the African National Congress. So you bear the burden of responsibility for what happens to South Africans since 1994 ANC. Well, folks, if you're not a subscriber to Chris White Africa, hey, why not become one? Smash the button, toggle the updates so you get updated of all future streams and prepared videos, and why not give us a like? Thanks a lot for your time, for your patronage, and your support for the channel. God bless. And hang in there, South Africa. It's a long road, but hopefully a bright light at the end of the tunnel.